Hello, everybody. Welcome to this webinar. Can you hear us? Can you see us first? And you can answer in the comments in the chat. Normally, we should see the answers coming now. Hi, Axel. Nice to meet you. So, welcome to this webinar about Nocode, organized by BE-READI Alps, and I will now give the microphone to Anne-Eiffel, and we are Contournement. We'll explain later who we are. So, Anne-Eiffel, you're welcome to introduce.
Thank you. So hello everyone, and welcome again to our webinar, so dedicated to the Nocode tool. So we are very pleased to partnership with Contournement for this webinar, which is organized as part of the BE-READI Apps program. So we at French Tech Grande Provence, we are part of this program with along with the other 14 partners. So which is my next slide. So you can have an overview on the 14 partners that they are located in the Alpine space area. So meaning Germany, Italy, France, Switzerland, and might be some other. So this European program really aims at supporting SMEs in their innovative project. So this is my next slide. So whether it is for an external services you want to develop, or maybe it's for an internal needs that you have. So this program is here for you to support you in your project and to help you for each steps of your project. So if you are based, for example, if now in the virtual space, we have some SME space in the south of France, you can write us so we can give you more insights on the program and how we can help you also through coaching session, networking events. We can also organize dedicated training session. As you will see on the next slide, we really have a full program to support you in your project. So if you're really, maybe you only have the start of an idea coming up, so feel free to join the program to have more insight. So, and if maybe we have some European SMEs now in the participants, you can also write us so we can reorient you to the BE-READI point contact. So this project is also co-financed by the European region. So we have, let's say that we have all the tools to help you in your project, especially after this thought period. If you need some support and help, it's the right occasion to do so. And so I will just conclude by saying that if you have any questions, feel free to write us at French Tech Grande Provence. And now I'm looking forward to hearing Contournement team about the Nocode tools. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Anne-Eiffel, for this introduction. And so we'll talk again in the comments. So I see you in a few minutes. Okay. So, as I said, welcome to this workshop webinar about no-code tools, because no-code tools are the new generation type of technologies that enable you to create websites, to create web applications, mobile applications, automations also, but without coding. You don't have to know how to code to develop such things. You can do many things, and it's not been a long time since you can do this. We will talk about this context just afterwards. And you will see also, of course, there are limits, and we'll talk about it also. So for SMBs, for organizations, for startups, even for big companies, that can be a real big leverage of digital production. And that's what we are here to talk about. So before we begin, first thing, we'll try to speak around 45 minutes, and then to get your questions and answer them. If you have some questions, don't ask them in the comment block. Put it in the questions block. Why? Because then you can vote those questions, and we will answer first the most voted questions. And when you will have the replay, you can click the questions and get to the right point of the video of the replay where we answer the questions. So don't hesitate to ask questions in the question module. And to finish, know that after this webinar, you will have an email with the replay, the presentation, and the resources into it. So don't panic, even if you have to answer a call or something like that, you will have the replay. Okay, let's start. Before explaining things to you, we'll just show you two examples of projects, mobile applications developed with no code. At the beginning of the epidemic, we developed for free as beer, for two organizations, two mobile applications. There was one for Banlieue Santé on the left. You can see it on enmodeconfiné.org. If you want to test it on the phone, you can. We have developed it with a no-code tool that is called Glide. Glide is interesting because Glide says everybody here can use a Google spreadsheet, a Google Sheet, you know, a table tool on the internet. And with it, you can build very simply a mobile applications. So they are very focused on this way of doing things. And we have done this mobile app for Banlieue Santé, who delivered some meals to elder people in this underprivileged neighborhoods. And we developed this web app so that people can give some money, some food, and all, and also so that they could coordinate and manage all the people who came to help them, all the teams of volunteers. So we built it with a mobile app with Glide apps, the tool to make mobile apps, and behind it there was an Airtable. That is a tool we'll talk about afterwards. You can make databases with Airtable without being a programmer or a developer. And also they translated some videos into several languages and dialects for people who weren't speaking French about how to prevent the epidemic, you know, against the virus. We had 2 days to do this application. We used to run web agencies with code. We would have spent some days, some weeks. It would have been expensive. But the second example, the app, the mobile app on the right, it's h24emergencies.fr. And now I will show you more in detail what it looks like and how we built it. We will look into the motor of Glide apps. So Zahim, the woman set up this organization, she said to me, I know very well the healthcare houses. In France, healthcare houses, that's places where you can get healthcare, and practically nobody knows them. And during the epidemic, the emergency services were full, so people who got ill with something else than the virus, they couldn't get healthcare. So she called by hand many healthcare houses, took the information of when they are opened, how people can ask doctors some advice, and all. We've put it into Glide and we made this application. So I can click a healthcare house, I can see the information, I can favorite it, but they ask my mail. I can sort them, filter them through if they are favorited or not. I can use a search bar in real time. And there are other pages. I spent 2 hours to make this application with Glide. How is it built behind? How could I, in 2 hours, do this? Glide here, I'm connected to Glide, and for example, look, all those blocks, I see a little green point that shows me where I am. And for example, I take this item, I just move it it moves. Visually, I don't have to write code to make it move, no? That's no code. So that's to build the pages, this part. But behind this map, this mapped list, what is there behind? There is this. There is a clean and structured table with the name of the healthcare house, comments about the hours and all, the address, phone number, links to the websites and the pictures. And when you put that into Glide, it works on it, it proposes something to you, you reorganize it, and after, I think, 1 hour, I had this map. And because I had also to think about how to organize it and all. Technically, if I had all the elements, I could have done it in one, maybe, a quarter of an hour, 15 minutes. So this is a very good and concrete illustration, example of what you can do with no code for mobile apps here. And if you're interested in those two apps, don't hesitate to contact them. They are still active, and maybe they can replicate in some other countries. And if you want to know more about Glide, we had an interview. When you get the presentation, you have all the links in the presentation. We interviewed 6 French projects made with Glide against the epidemic. So the podcast is in French, but the introduction is with the founder of Glide tool, and that's in English. So if you're interested in it, there is a link here. So welcome to this workshop. Now we can introduce ourselves. We are contournement. In French, contournement means bypass, to bypass problems, to bypass barriers, to bypass technical barriers. That's why we are called like this. And we train people and give consultancy to people who want to make some no-code projects. Who want to make some projects, sometimes they don't even know they can do with no code. But if they don't know how to code and need to build a website or a mobile app, for example, yes, we explain to them, we train them on how to do it without coding, to find the shortest way between what they have in their mind and the concrete digital embodiment, realization of it. So we are now 4 people in Contournement, but with the 2 co-founders are Alexis and I. And what is interesting is that we had set up several projects in our careers. And notably, I set up Simplon.co that has become the biggest network of coding schools in the world, of free coding schools. And that was a social business, social company, because that was free, and that was for people who didn't have diplomas, for refugee people and all. And so we ended being on 40 cities in the world. And I left Simplon in 2017. And often people ask us, how did you come from setting up a code school to a no-code school? And what we explain is that democratization of the means of production, of digital means of production, is what interests us. So that's why in 2013, we had identified some technologies that made it more accessible for people to learn code and to build apps. But it was still complicated and long. So now we think that on the no-code tools, you have to invest if you want to make something faster and quicker. So that's why we are here. But now there is no jobs in the no-code universe. For example, for the moment, there are opportunities in freelance, opportunities for the structures, the SMBs, the startup to build their projects, but not for people to find jobs. That's another difference. And that's at Simplon that we met one another with Alexis.
Hi, I'm Alex, and I joined Simplon in 2015. That's where I met Erwan. I have a technical background, as I'm originally a programmer, and I've been the CTO of several startups. So I came to Simplon originally to start Simplon Prod, which is the web agency of Simplon, where we would recruit some of the students to work on paid projects like website, mobile apps for various types of clients, like big corporations, NGOs, nonprofits, mostly. And I left Simplon about a year ago, and I've decided that now I wanted to empower people to build all this by themselves with the no-code tools and without necessarily having to code anything. So that's why we're here with Erwan.
Yeah. We come from coding, training on coding, producing with code. So that's what's interesting also sometimes in our vision, I think, is coming from no code to code. And as you'll see, when we say no code, we don't say no more programmers, no more developers. No, we'll talk about it afterwards. I see that new people are coming. So if you want to welcome first, and if you want to ask questions, don't ask it in the chat. Ask it in the questions part, because there may be people who have asked the same question, so we can vote those questions. Okay. Why are... Our program is first to introduce you about the no-code movement, the context. Then we'll explain to you some real cases from real life of successful projects built with no-code. Then we will give you a great overview of no-code, not only on apps, but also on augmented reality, blockchain, many things like this. And then we'll have the Q&A. Let's go. Why no-code and the way of contournement? 0.3% of the people in the world know how to code. So that's very few people, and notably in a period when many companies, many people, many ideas need a digital app or website, but very few people can build it. So what would happen if 99.7% of the other people could make it not easily, but more easily? That's what no-code tools finally enables us to do. You know, 6 years ago, I had already discovered Bubble. That is a tool to make web applications that is very powerful, but it was not really stable. It was not as rich as it's now. And at this time, you know, in 2015, we said to ourselves, even 2014, no code is not ready. But in 2018, we tested some new no-code tools, and we found them very user-friendly, very powerful, very stable, very rich, who could do many things. So in 2018, we said to ourselves, yeah, let's go. Now no-code is mature, no-code is ready. So that was the first time, the first sign when we tested those tools again. Second sign of this maturity was the fact that some startups just bootstrapped without developers. For example, Comet is a French example we talk about, but some other startups just kickstarted their platforms without any developers, without any coders, and succeeded. So we said to ourselves, yeah, that's a sign of maturity of no-code. Third sign, some no-code tools had raised some millions of dollars. So we didn't talk anymore about the small tool that may die tomorrow. No. That were tools that were funded with big teams and with thousands of users. So it became a bit more stronger. And fourth sign, we saw that some ecosystems popped up around no-code agencies, online trainings, etc. So we decided to make contournement and to talk about no-code more broadly as we do it here. And we began to see some tweets like this. Andrew Wilkinson is a serial entrepreneur who, for example, set up Dribble, a platform for designers. And he tweeted, earlier this year, I had a productivity breakthrough. I used to spend between 25K and 100K building an app over 3 to 6 months. It was frustrating, expensive, and slow. Then I started using no-code tools like Webflow, Bubble, Zapier, and Airtable. And we hope you will have the same breakthrough today. And just to begin, We will talk about websites, web apps, mobile apps. Just to put it simply, the first line above, that's about websites. It means simple sites, like a website where you just show who you are, explain who you are. You can't have rich interactions. Web application, and the line below, application, that's about real complex tools you can find online or platforms. For example, Airbnb, Facebook, Twitter, those are applications, not websites. So with no code, you can do websites, mobile sites, or mobile applications that are really designed for being used on the phone or for using also the features of the phone, taking photos, accelerometer, GPS. So you can do that 4 kind of things with no code with different tools. Let's begin to show you examples, real life examples. And when we talk about the stacks that go with it, you know, for the developers, a stack is the combination of tools you use to reach your goal, to build your service. Comet. So, you know, we French people like to promote some projects that are French. And so that's the Rooster example. Comet is a platform, French platform, that puts into relation big companies and high level of quality in freelances, top level quality freelances in data and dev. They began how you have to begin, by hand. They contacted people, clients, big companies on LinkedIn by hand, sent messages, took their phones, put them into relationship with their methodology, and they saw that it began to work. People liked what they do. The value proposition was okay, validated. So they said to themselves, now we have to automate. Now we have to build a platform because we are losing time. No one was a coder in the Comet co-founders. So there is one of the three co-founders who found Bubble, the tool to make web applications with no code. He trained on this, on himself, and after 4 days, I think, he already had a first version of the application of Comet, and people used it. Okay, they grew, and then they began to feel a bit limited by no code. So then they raised 2 million euros with investors, and then they began to make a transition from no code to code, because for the design, for machine learning, for different reasons, that was enough. They needed code on some parts of Comet, but they still have some parts in no code on their platform. That's interesting also. And what is interesting is also that they reached 500,000 euros per year without having written or invested in any line of code. So that's a good example of how a project can reach a maturity point without coding at the beginning, and also because their platform was okay to be built with no code. And then they raised more money, and they had hired the CTO, so someone technical to code that all. And they talk much about no code now and how you can build your own projects with it. And I have something to precise also. We'll give mainly examples of startups examples, but for SMBs, you know, just imagine how you can sometimes need a website or a web app and maybe experiment around it. So those examples are very pragmatical examples, and if you have questions about how to transpose it to your situations, you can ask it in the end of the webinar.
Here's another example that we really like at Contournement. It's called Ito. So it comes from the fact that there in the US, people have big backyards, and they have sometimes small houses or sheds, you know, in their backyards. So there is this guy called Caleb Barkley who wondered if there would be an opportunity to build a marketplace for those houses, for those backyard homes. So basically he made two assumptions. First, people are interested in their backyard houses at some point. Second, people are willing to buy secondhand houses. He easily verified the first assumption by scouting the web and sites like Craigslist, where he found a lot of listings like that. So he gathered them all in a Google Sheet because he knew that would help him kickstart his project when he begins, because you always need to have some ads to have some content on your marketplace. Then he went on to verify the second assumption, and for that he needed to build a website that would display all the houses available in a nice way. For that, he used a Nocode tool called Webflow, which is a very popular tool and very powerful. And I need to specify that he's not a programmer, he's a designer. So he built all this without writing a line of code. So he quickly built the website. You can see on the screenshot on the screen a first version. If you go now, you'll see it even more evolved. And then he put inside the Webflow database all the data he collected in his Google Sheet. And so that was very efficient because in about a day, he had the website up and running with content already. Then he needed a way to collect the leads on the houses, people who would be interested in buying them. So for that, he used Airtable, a database management tool that we'll talk about more later. He made a form that would store in Airtable all the people that are interested, and then automatically with Zapier, he would generate a quote, a PDF file, a quote for the house that he would send to both email to both the owner of the house and the people interested. So all this was automated. He didn't have to do anything by hand. So all this that I'm telling, it took about 60 hours to build in total. And then when he launched it, in the first months, he generated about 4,000 leads. And he was also number one on Product Hunt for a day, which is a platform where people launch their product. So it drives a lot of traffic when you get to be number one over there. So we can say that he definitely verified without coding and spending a cent that there was an opportunity for his idea. Second story that we also really like is L'Intendance. It's a French company based in Station F. It's a great project started by Myriam and Noélie that offers organic bulk products. So you can buy everything online and it will be delivered by you by bike or electric motorcycle. So no carbon emissions and no plastic involved. So we really recommend that you use it if you're in France. It's a very, very cool project. But let's have a look how they built that. So they wanted to make something very attractive because, in e-commerce, you have to make a website that's very attractive to people. So they come and buy. So they went to designers and the designers recommended to use Webflow again. And the result was very nice. You can have a look on their website. And the good thing with Webflow is that also they can update things themselves. They are not dependent on the designers. They can make new products, make banners, all those things, because Webflow is very intuitive also for people who are not developers. Webflow has a built-in e-commerce feature, so that was very easy to take care of. The only thing is it handles the taxes in the American way, meaning that the tax depends on the state where you are. So in France, it's not working like this. So they use Airtable combined with Zapier, again, those two tools, to process the taxes and generate an invoice that would work for French customers. And then for the logistics, they couldn't do everything with Nocode, so they used a little bit of code of Python to generate a detailed order with images that they would send to the people who are preparing the packages in the warehouse. And so, as you can see in this modular approach, you can completely have some parts in no-code, but then also some parts with code. I mean, we never said that no-code tools meant no code at all. It means combining them with code if needed. It's important to always use the most and best option for your project. And we have one last example. So this is also one we really like. It's a typical side project. It's not a big startup. It's someone who just launched that. So it basically shows you the weather, today's weather in comparison to yesterday's weather. It might sound silly, but when you think about it, it's actually a very good way to realize how the weather is feeling like today. So this was built by Drew Thomas with a tool called Thunkable, which is a very powerful no-code tool to build native apps. And you can also use it to connect APIs. So for instance, he used it to connect to this service called Dark Sky that gives you the weather of a location that you will send them. And with Thunkable, you can even deploy the apps to the stores. So this app is actually available for $2.99. The story doesn't say how many he sold, but it took him only a day to do it. So I think it was worth a shot, and just going all to the end of his ID and put it online, and then you can see if people want it or not.
And what is interesting in this project is also that they use an API. So maybe not but here knows what an API is, but just think of it like a tube, a pipe, so that you can use the data of another service. For example, about the train service, the hours in the train service. If you want to use it in your app, with no code, you can connect to it. And you can also give access to your data. So that's a very important point. And so, as you saw, there were many French and American examples, but know that in Europa, we are quite practically sure that there are many no-code examples we don't know about. So if you know some of them, don't hesitate to share them in the comments. And for example, French Tech Grande Provence is organizing the first hackathon in no-code in France, and there are many projects that subscribed. So I think that's important that in Europa and in our countries, we share that kind of experiences so that we give the good example, because those are democratizing tools. So they have to be well known by people and companies who are not very, normally very used to use digital tools. So spread the love, as we would say in the startups. Which methodology? Because with no code, that's like with code, you can do too ambitious projects that never end, that cost more, that are more expensive than what was forecast at the beginning. So what we think is that no code have to be thought with the MVP approach. MVP, for the people who don't know it, that's minimum viable project. The first brick of your project, the simplest as possible, so that you can test it on your users. The first line here above, that's not the MVP approach. I want to make a car, so I will make one wheel, then the second wheel, then the body of the car, and then after 2 years, maybe I will have a car working, hopefully, and people will use the car, but maybe they won't use it because they don't want it. So making the MVP approach is rather the line below. I want people to roll on something and go faster. So I will build a skateboard after 3 hours on my own with no code tools. I see how people use it. I see that sometimes they fall on the floor. So instead of putting a motor, a reactor behind, as I thought I will put something so that they can be well balanced. So I see how they use a skateboard, and I make a scooter in some days with no code tools to improve their experience. And then I will make a bike, and then a motor, and then a car. So that's how you should use no-code tools in your projects. And that's a part of the lean startup approach. So the lean startup is the principle of having ideas. Everybody have ideas, but you build as fast as possible a first product. If you followed me, so that's the MVP, the first brick. And then you measure how people use it with data. You have some conclusions about this. Then you have new ideas, and you iterate a new cycle. You build something else. So maybe you will improve your first brick. Maybe you will make a second brick beneath it. Maybe you will throw it to the bin to build a new brick because you see that people don't use your service. So that's how you should do with no code. Notably because you can do it on yourself or someone in your team, and you don't depend on some other third party like a web agency or something, and you don't need money to try your MVP. That's what's interesting in no-code, in the MVP approach for no coding. But also, as I said, even if no coding is simpler, it doesn't mean it's easy. You have to learn it if you want to master it really, and to do a first brick, then a second brick, then a third brick. If you want to do everything at the same time, that's too risky. And as I said also, when we say no code, we don't say the code is dead, because if you begin by no coding your project, there is more probability than you will succeed. More projects have a chance to succeed if there is no this code barrier at the entrance. And if you succeed, it means that we will need more coders behind it, because as Comet did, if your project succeeds, there is a point at which you may need coders and coding teams. So that's important to say. But that will be more code with more added value, you know. And also you can choose two ways of building your app, of choosing your tools. The all-in-one way of doing it is I use only one tool to make my service. For example, Bubble is a very powerful no-code tool. You can do practically everything to make your app, but it's harder to master it. It can be a bit heavy in some cases. That's why there is the second approach, the modular approach, like the Legos you can see underneath. You choose one tool to make each part of your project. For Typeform for the forms, for example, Airtable to manage the database, Webflow for the website, and Stripe for the payment. And you connect all those services. It can be faster, easier, and more user-friendly. For example, we have a training where we take people who have a project, and in 6 weeks, they come and build it with no code, with 2 times 3 hours a week in the evening, so that they can keep their main activity. That's why it's called side project. And Natalie had a project where people who had African typed hair could be coached on managing beauty with it, because that's kind of complicated. And so at the beginning, we wanted to make a mobile app that notified you when you needed to buy this product, depending on the type of your hair and all. And then we saw that it was too complex with Bubble. So we just broke the project into several bricks with Typeform, plus Bubble, plus Stripe, plus SandGrid, and the project was released faster. And Natalie appreciated it more because with Bubble, it was too complicated, for example. But there are also examples of people who really liked Bubble because they preferred it. So we don't have a really precise choice between integrated approach or modular approach. It depends on your project, it depends on who you are, and it depends on maybe sometimes the time you have, the investment you can get, and all. And just to precise how it worked, people fill a form about the length of the hair, the type of the hair, and all. Then with Bubble, there is a bit of logic saying if people have 6A or 6B or 7A type of hair and they have long hair, then give them this diagnosis about their hair. So if this type and this length, give this part of text to the person. So that was a personalized diagnosis. And then if people wanted to get personalized emails at the right moment, they had to pay with Stripe. And there was a tool, SandGrid, that sent emails to them based on the logic that was generated in Bubble. So that was how it worked. And after, I don't know, 4 days, it was released. But with Bubble, if we had done everything with Bubble, it would have lasted much longer. So let's give an example of the modular way so that you know the tools you can use. Imagine I want to create a service that enables people to borrow music instruments to other users. First, I need a website where I can show my service and where users can access it. That's what we call the user interface, the website brick. Here you have several tools from the simplest to the most advanced. Weebly, for example, that's what you see on the right. That's very well done. After 1 hour, you will be totally good with Weebly. It's very intuitive, very user-friendly, but you are kind of limited. Webflow, at the contrary, the last one, you can do what you want. That's like making HTML, CSS, JavaScript, but without coding. That's a mega Photoshop of the code. And you can export this code and use it for making your site, for example. Or you can host it at Webflows. That's a very powerful tool, but if you want to master it, you need some weeks before mastering it. So for you, if you want to test a project, that may not be a right choice. But L'Intendance, one of the examples we gave, they had a really, really big goal of design in their project. So Webflow was the right choice. And Squarespace, Card.co are alternative solutions. Then people need to send and publish their instruments offers. I want to lend my guitar, for example. That's the bricks to enter data, the forms. I talked about Typeform. That's a very elegant and powerful way of making forms. That's what you can see on the right. JotForm is an alternative. You can pre-fill some forms. So there are always some alternatives. The good way of doing it is choosing the right tool for the right job. And that's why we exist, to give advice to people. And there are other options. For example, in Webflow, there is a form by default. In Airtable also, in Google Forms also. So it's faster to do it with them, but it may not be an experience as elegant as with Typeform, for example. So it depends on your priorities. And of course, I need somewhere to store those data so that I can use them in my service. I have to store those data with a database. As you saw, with Glide, you can use a Google Sheet to produce a mobile app. But you can also use Airtable. That's a very powerful tool to make database. You can have a table and transform it into a calendar, a geolocated map, into also a Kanban, done. A gallery of images, as you see underneath. That's a very powerful tool. We just released a training about it in French, and you can really make apps just with it. And Integromat is a Xesh alternative. That is a very powerful alternative to Airtable also, and that's European. Then it can be useful if users get a notification when someone wants to borrow their music instruments. That's the automation and programming brick. Because be careful, even if you know code, you program. You give commands and orders to the machine. You say, if people click and get this, then do this and do that. You're programming with no code, but you are programming without writing code. Zapier can connect more than 2,000 applications. For example, underneath you see, if people fills a form in Typeform, then automatically create a new person in my customer relationship management system, then subscribe this person in MailChimp to our newsletter, and notify me with an email that everything has been done. So all the things you will do by hand, manually, you can automate them with Zapier. With Integromat and Parabola, you can also do this. That's sometimes a bit more technical, but without coding, you can make really automation chains that are very powerful. IFTTT is, that's for the name. We like the name because it means if this, then that, but that's a much more, not as user-friendly and not as powerful. And Phantom Buster also to automatically collect data. And last but not least, to close their deals, users may have to pay for what they borrow. Then I suppose it can be called a leasing and not a loan, but that's not a problem. So if they want to pay external services, as we talked about with Stripe, you want to put some payment in your app, don't code something to pay. No, use Stripe. That's a very good way of connecting to your bank account and all. One Signal to implement push notifications, you know, the notifications you have on the top of your phone. MailerLite, MailChimp, SendGrid for transactional emails, you know, those emails that come to tell you, hey, you have bought this bag. It fits very well with this chair, so we give you a discount. You know, automated emails that aim at informing you or selling you something. That's a very important part in apps made with no code, notably. And Twilio to use SMS in your apps, so you can get SMS notifications for users with no code. And now I let Alexi talk about the all-in-one way. When, you know, like Bubble, you choose one tool to make all your application without connecting several applications.
So as you just saw, you can use several tools and put them together as a stack. So as Vlad Magdalene, the CEO of Webflow, was saying, you can have AWZ stack, Airtable plus Webflow plus Zapier. But then Bubble was quick to note that Bubble can basically replace Webflow plus Airtable plus Zapier. Let me show you why. So there are several app builders, but we will only talk about Bubble because there's quite some questions to answer. So I'll finish quickly on this. Basically, Bubble is like PowerPoint. Let's just put it this way. You can just drag and drop. You have a design page where you will drag and drop visual elements onto a white canvas, and that's how you will build your page. It's super easy. But then you also have workflows, which is like programming. It's pretty much like Zapier. It's like you will say, when people click on this button, something will happen, an element will appear, an email will be sent. All this is very easy to do, and it's all visual. You don't have to type a line of code. Then you have the data part, where it's like a table. It's a lot less visual, obviously, but it's very powerful. You can store all types of data. You can define your types of data. You can do many different things. And then you have the styles, where you can choose the right styles for your UI. So basically, Bubble has abstracted in a visual way all the elements of the life of a programmer. I would say, like, all the job of a programmer is abstracted in a visual way in Bubble. That also means there is a bit of a steep learning curve. It means almost like learning a programming language, but then what you can do with it is almost unlimited. One thing I want to add also is that Bubble exists for 8 years now almost. So they have big communities, really massive. They have a forum that's very active. So when you learn, if you have any questions, you can go to the forum, you will find answers, or you will find people to answer your questions. So that's very interesting. And even in France, there is quite an active community also as part of Contournement on our Slack channels. So it's very, very interesting. And also there's a plugin library. It's a little bit like for people who know WordPress. You have the same thing where you can add plugins to your website, and that will give you more elements. They will give you more power. So all this is very powerful, and it makes Bubble very stable and very powerful. And they release new features very, very often. The rest you will see in the presentation. I just want to mention Infinable. That is a French tool. But so you have several alternatives, but none, unfortunately, yet are as powerful as Bubble because they have quite a head start. And then I'm sure many of you are interested in building mobile apps, which is a bit like one of the cool things to do these days. I'll talk just about one tool called Adalo, which is one of our favorite tools these days. We've even built a training course for it. Adalo is somewhere between Glide that Erwan has showed you at the beginning, that is super easy to start, and Bubble, that is the most powerful. Somewhere in the middle, you have Adalo. You can see a screenshot there, and it's you can drag and drop elements. You can design the pages the way you want. You don't have as many options in design than in Bubble, but it also will help you go faster in a way. You don't have to think about, oh, I want to put this button in this color and all this. It will really take you straight to the point. And they also made it very simple to deploy the apps on the stores, on the App Store for Apple or the Play Store for Google, which I know as a developer, I've had to do it. It's a very tedious task. So they really help you on this.
And here is the great overview of Nocode I've just promised. So we will put it very quickly so that we can answer the questions, and that's normal. We wanted to do it like it. But remember that you will have the replay and the presentation with the clickable links. So know that you can do no code for newsletters, to transform a database into a website, as we did with Glide for a mobile app, but you can do it for websites. E-commerce, APIs, so to connect to data from outside or to give access to your data. Scrapping, to automatically copy and paste some information from a website, for example, automatically. Chatbots, virtual conversational agents. Vocal assistant, like OK Google, OK Siri. You can program a bit of it with voice flow. 3D, virtual reality, augmented reality, notably 2 French startups, Naker and Minsar, that are quite strong. Video games, so to build video games or serious games. Artificial intelligence and machine learning, you can prototype it without coding now. Blockchain, Internet of Things. So some tools are very performing, some are just okay to prototype, but know that you can do that all now more and more without coding. That's our website, contournement.io. For the moment, we are mainly French speaking, but there is our manifesto in English. And we will inform you if one day we pivot to more English speaking content. And nocoders.fr for people who read French. That's a website where we have put many free resources, so you can explore it. And if someone wants to translate that all, I don't know how, but we can talk about it. We make some events, we make some formats. For example, we make podcasts, we have online courses, so that's mainly in French. But we have office hours also. If you need a diagnosis about a project, for example, we can give you 15 minutes it depends. Sometimes it's on Wednesday, sometimes on Friday, but there is a Calendly. I will add the link in the post-webinar email. But for example, this afternoon we have one diagnosis for an English-speaking organization, so we can do it in English, and we are, and that's for free, of course. That's 15 minutes. You can book online. So thank you. I think it's time to answer the questions. So I go back to Livestorm, and here is our email and our social networks. So sometimes we communicate in English, sometimes in French. So you can, follow us if you want. And also, Anifel has let her contact in the chat. Oui. And I invite Anifel on stage again. So let's sort your vote according to your questions according to the numbers of votes. So Anifel, if you hear me, I invited you again. I see you're getting ready. Okay. I will begin with the GDP. I know, Anifel is here. So, are you working only in your region or in the entire Alpine region? Contournement, we mainly sell some online trainings, but in French for the moment. But we may do an English-speaking one on Adalo, because we are partnering sometimes with some editors, notably Adalo and Airtable. So we may have a training in English. So that's worldwide. That's not only in our region or Alpine region. And about finding some experts. I don't know if you want to get trained on no-code or to find an expert who can no-code your platform. Yeah, come to us. We can find the time online on Google Hangouts to take your brief, to make a diagnosis, and then to recommend you to someone. So to answer, as long as we can work online, notably with video conferences, we can get in touch, notably through the link we will send to you after the webinar about if you want some office hours of 15 minutes. But know that in the region, I talk about it again. French Tech Grande Provence is very interested in no-code. They organized the first hackathon about it in France. So there may be some things you can do together locally. I don't know, Anifel, if you...
Yeah, sure. You can get in touch with us if you want to have, let's say, a local contact, because for sure Contournement is working worldwide. And let's say that French Tech Grande Provence, regarding all the innovation parts within the BE-READI Apps program, we are the main contact. But I see that the question is coming from partners of the European program. So thank you, Umberto.
And just for information, in the European Commission, we got in Contournement, we got into contact and made a small webinar for the social good, social business pole. And now they are well informed about no-code and enthusiastic about it. The Grow Commission, I think it was called. Are these no-code tools GDPR friendly? GDPR is kind of a responsibility chain, a chain of responsibilities. So there is a part of the question that that doesn't only concern only the no-code tools, but some, they are evolving very fast, those tools, and it depends. Generally, most of the tools we recommend here, they are friendly if you use them well, if you may write the right messages at the right place. Generally, you won't have limits to make your website or web app GDPR friendly. Of course, sometimes having someone when you release a project, having someone, a jurist, a law person that can confirm it is important. But for those tools, Europe is an important market, so generally they get conform for it. And also, I had something else to say. Yes, but sometimes there are some details. For example, in Weebly, in the e-commerce version, you can't get the checkbox to confirm that people have read the general use conditions. So that can be a small technical obstacle. So there are some details sometimes, notably for e-commerce, that can be a bit blocking. But generally, that's now for the moment. Even with big companies, we haven't had any problem with Webflow or Bubble. Also, can propose you to host your data in Europa. It's expensive to do this, but you can do it for your information. where are stored the data of the applications built with Bubble, etc. So as I just said, Bubble enables you to store your data in Europa, but it can be expensive. But most of those applications host the data in the United States. So sometimes, depending on what, for example, if you have sensitive data in a, I don't know, in a sensitive structure, you may have to see with someone, a lawyer or someone who can, give you some specialized advices, because sometimes the laws are not the same than in here, than in Europa, and but most of those tools are freemium tools. So their business model is not to sell your data; that's to make you pay for a service. So generally, you have to see deeper in what is written on their websites, but they don't seem to sell data. That's not the business model of Facebook. Are there French or European no-code platforms? So Alexis, if you can complete what I will say if you want, but in France, we have Infinable, who is building an app builder, like a bit like Bubble, but they are younger, and they have an on-premise version. It means you build your app with Infinable, and then you can host it yourself. So there are less problem with the questions of data and less barriers, because you can host as you want. Celestory to make serious games, so you can find it in our list in the presentation. Minsar to make 3D or reality, augmented or virtual reality. Naker to make some 3D interactive environments. There is Integromat, that is Czech, and I thought
there's a MailerLite, that's a Latvian tool, I believe, and they do two things. They're famous for having a mailer system like Mailchimp and all those things that can be useful. But they also released recently a website builder that is on par like Weebly or this kind of tool that is actually quite interesting. So you should have a look.
when is it possible to extract the code generated by those no-code tools? Do you think it's easy to reuse them when we reach the code phase of the project? It depends, but Alexis, if you want to answer about it.
Yeah, well, let's say mostly it's not possible to extract the code. It's not. Usually the idea is to we forgot one. Sorry, just realized we forgot one. Also a company in the previous question, which is Udo, and I know Olivier is watching, so I have to mention tools for SMEs, SMBs to build tools. But they also did a webinar, so I guess you must have seen them already. So yeah, for the generating code, it's in general for the tools we've mentioned in this presentation, it's not possible except for Webflow. But yeah, so usually what happens is that they host the code. That's the idea. I mean, what we're looking for is tools that are powerful and that makes things, building websites, building all this accessible. So the idea is not only that the tool helps you build this easily, it also helps you host it. So that's really important to understand in our philosophy, is that we want everything to be abstracted to the people, so you can easily build and not having just one half and like, okay, you build it, but then you still have to host it. So yeah, that's really the idea. So there are options that exist, but I'll say and I wish there were more options in Europe and in France, but in general, the idea is like that you you build things quickly and they are hosted, so everything is easy for you to do and scale. And then eventually, when hopefully you become too big to have something that is hosted, then you will rebuild everything with an agency. And what you've done with Nocode will be your prototype, or it will be the best specification document. Then you won't have to write any line of specifications. You'll just show what you've built with Nocode, and then you'll have developers build that and to keep scaling.
I put the link to Udo in the chat, but know that putting aside no-code tools, there also are some experts about no-code in France. I imagine also in the other countries. For example, in France, there is Auto Tools. That's a platform with many tutorials to learn no-code. And yeah, there are agencies also, people who can produce some, can give consultancy or produce some websites, web apps. So know that locally there are some things. You don't need to find experts in the United States. If you need recommendations, come to us. We know those experts, so can send you to the right people. So that's not exactly the same question, but which would be the most appropriate tool to extract the code generated and reuse it to improve other already available websites? As we said, there are some tools that enable you to export a part of the code, and some other you can really not, even using another tool, extract the code. For example, Webflow, you can export the code and host it somewhere else without any problem, the HTML, CSS, JavaScript. DraftBit also enables you to do it for the React Native part of your mobile. But generally, you can export the database, of course. In Glide, for example, you can take your Google spreadsheet, but you can export nothing on Glide. You know, as Alexis said, they auto-host the application, they run the application, but you can't export the front end or back end with no code. That's not really what their promise. So I think maybe tomorrow it will be possible. For the moment, think about the investment it enables you not to do in time, in money, and all. And that's, as I said, with an MVP, you can throw easy. It's more easy. It's easier to throw to the bin, to the trash, a first version of your project. If you did it, you built it on your own in 2 weeks with no code, rather than if you had paid 10,000 euros to do it in 1 month, for example.
I think honestly, I understand that it's interesting to want to get the code and host it and all this, but I think it's a bit missing the point of no code, to be honest. For companies, I can see interesting, but I think the approach that Erwan was describing earlier and what you just said is really what's important. It's like it's important to go fast and to of course, if you can, but having the simplest way to do all this and build all this, that's the promise of no-code. That's what we really want. That's the real empowerment, I believe.
So much complexity in digital projects. Yeah, to reduce it as much as possible is a priority. With Glide, must Google Sheets be the same for all app users? I mean, is it possible to have the same app for all users, but with their own data? Interesting. I think, I don't know, Alexis, if you want to answer about it, but that's the question about profiles, indeed.
Yeah.
And
no, I can answer if you want. It is totally possible. That's the idea, actually. The Google Sheet is your database, and it can be used to store different things and also user data. So it's really, Glide was really made for that, and it's fairly simple to do, actually, and it will be transparent for you. So it is possible, and that's really the idea. That's how you can build marketplaces or social networks or things like that, even with Glide, really.
And more generally, globally, when we talk about apps, that means, and that's one of the power of no-code tools like Bubble, Adalo, Glide, and all. That's about people who subscribe and create a profile, like on Airbnb, like on Twitter. That's what is interesting in no-code. That's having a database behind and giving the possibility to users to get a database and their profile, their history, and all. So, yeah, powerful apps. How or how much can we manage the security of the no-code apps? Generally, they do it for you. That's like auto-hosting apps. That's their job to provide you with a secured solution. Sometimes, for example, in Weebly, you have to opt in on the HTTPS option so that it gets HTTPS, but I don't think you can go very far in in most of the no-code tools, but you have to be careful about how you set your parameters. For example, in Glide, the database is a Google Sheet. If you say that the link is a public link and gives access to everybody on the internet to your database, that will be a big security problem, but that will not be technical. That will be a question of, I didn't notice that I made an error in how I set all the parameters. So you have to be very careful about it. That's why sometimes, even if you do it on yourself, working a bit with an expert can be important. And yeah, but generally, I think with Infinable, for example, on premise, you can host your own app. You have to be careful about security, but you don't have many power on how to secure those apps. And those apps, for the moment, we didn't hear about some scandals of security, or no, they seem to be quite serious and quite solid on it. Thank you, Etienne. Etienne from La French Tech Grande Provence. Do you prepare Webflow training? We often say that Webflow is a really interesting no-code tools, but we are rather in the no-code universe with features, not to make websites. But it's a no-code tool, and we have some things to say about Webflow, and we know experts about it. So maybe we'll do something about Webflow. For the moment, we used it. I don't know, Alexis, we have free tutorials, not about it.
We don't have so much right now, but we're working on it. Webflow requires a level of expertise that we're currently working on. But yeah, there will be content. Of course, it's such a major tool in the no-code world that we have to provide good courses for it.
So we will make content, but a real training, maybe, but we are not sure for the moment. Webflow is more easier to use than Bubble. I think the right question would be rather, what is the difference between Webflow and Bubble? Because they are really not used for the same stuff. If you want to make a website that is really well designed, very beautiful, if your interface, if what you see on the screen is really important, do it with Webflow. That's to make websites. But if you want to make a web app or a mobile app where people can subscribe, have, like some posts, comments, buy things, vote for things, and contact people, friend people, follow people, use Bubble. Because Webflow, you can't do that kind of features. People can't come to your Webflow website and subscribe and create themselves a profile. That's the whole difference between a website and a web app or a mobile app. So those are different use cases, Webflow for websites and Bubble for apps. But I would say that technically, they are the two no-code tools where you have to spend the most time to learn how to master it. For example, if you learn Webflow, you will learn like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, all the front-end stuff, like the box model, because there are many notions like this. And if you learn Webflow well, it won't be complicated for you to learn code, front-end code, for example, afterwards. And Bubble, yeah, you need several weeks also, but you won't focus on the same stuff. You will focus on database, features, logic, and all. So that's rather this choice you have to make. What do you want to build? And maybe you can choose some simpler solutions. For example, if you just need a simple website, use Weebly. Don't use Webflow. It's simpler, and you can master it quickly. If you want to make a simple mobile application, for example, go and see what you can do with Glide or Adalo. But Glide is faster to master than Adalo. Glide is faster to master. Adalo comes in second, and Bubble is really advanced. So that's how you should, choose which tool to use. In a nutshell, what important questions should we ask ourselves before moving to production? It depends on what you mean by moving to production. If you mean, I want to make a project and I don't know if I want to train myself or give it to an expert so that he produces it or she produces it, come to see us in our office hours, because generally we say to people if their project can be made in no code or if the best choice is to use code. Then we tell them which tools we would recommend depending on their priorities. Then we give advices on if they can do it on their own by maybe training themselves with our online trainings, or if they can produce it by being coached by an expert who produces with him or with her, or if the best solution is to give it to an expert and pay him so that he produces it. So the important questions in this case is, it depends on you, on how much time you have to learn that all, on how much money you have, on your project, also the complexity of your project. And that's why we make the office hours. That's to give the most precise and relevant advice as possible. If you ask this question, meaning I have my draft version of my app and when can I push it in public for the official version, our answer is the answer of the Lean Startup. As soon as possible. Release early, release often, and if you have to fail fast. The MVP, normally, the minimum viable product, the first brick of your project, you have to be a bit ashamed of it normally, because it's not perfect, there may be some bugs, but the most precious resource you have is your time and velocity. So if your app, your website does the job, even if that's not the whole job, release it, test it with the customers, because sometimes users will give you some feedback you really don't expect. And even if you're a traditional activity, that's not the startup, that's not a type of company, that's a type of approach on how to experiment new projects, release new websites or web apps. So here is my answer. And knowing that with most of no-code tools, you just have to click on publish my app and everybody can access it. So that's not With no-code tools, you don't have to see a host and parameters, some things. No. Publish, your app is ready. Good morning. This type of tools allows access to social networks too. Social networks, it depends on what you mean by giving access. Like on every website or web app, of course, you can make buttons or links to those social networks, okay? It can seem silly, but that's the simplest way of saying visit our Facebook. You can also embed social networks. For example, you say on this page, here I want my Facebook feed to appear in the website, of course. Then if you mean some deeper integrations, for example, controlling some things on the social networks, like publishing a new post, with Zapier, you can do it. You can say, for example, when there is an email from this person, automatically trigger a post on Facebook with the I don't know the attached file. I don't know, that would be a bit strange, but to integrate the social networks directly into the application, the no-code tools, without integrations, I think I'm not expert enough to answer. Alexis, on this question about integration of networks.
Depends. I mean, the most advanced no-code tool for this kind of things would be Bubble, obviously. And there are some plugins that allow you to have some sort of integration. But then, as I once said, there are many ways to do that, and it really depends what's the end goal of the access to the social networks. I mean,
I think that's a very good question to conclude, because the answer is, yeah, there may be some native stuff, some default stuff to do this in some tools like Bubble. But the right way of thinking about it is, first, what do you want to do? That's really, we have to be specificity or use case oriented. Second, do you really have to do like you think you have to do? Because maybe we can bypass this way of doing and find a creative solution, an alternative solution. That's why we exist also, Contournement. And sometimes we say, yes, but I don't need to use Facebook for this. I just need to, I don't know, by email, people can do this or that. Very often when you think you need this, the best way of thinking about it is, no, don't think about how, think about what you need, and we will bypass, maybe find a bypass solution to reach your goals. And also, sometimes you have to think, how can we connect several tools so that we reach that goal? So with Zapier and all. And that's what is interesting about no-code, being creative about the numerous solutions you can imagine. So I think there are no more answers. Do you confirm, Alexis? Because sometimes I don't see them all.
I think we've done all the questions.
Cool. And the quote Alexis just copied and pasted: if you are not embarrassed with the first version of your product, you've launched too late. That's really a lean startup quote. And also, Anifel talked about the webinar by Udo that was in French, but it will be soon available online. So, thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Erwan and Alexis. I hope this webinar has gave a really huge overview to the participants, and I see that many of them are our partners. So I hope you got a good overview that that might be interested for you to forward the information and the webinar to the SMEs you are following. So again, thank you very much, because I think the no-code topic is not that well known, and so sometimes for SMEs it can be they don't know really what does it mean, so they don't know what they can get it from it, but actually they can get a lot of it. So I hope the recorded version will give insights to many SMEs.
Yes, we hope so. If you need some diagnosis, sometimes you have some questions, remember that we have the office hours where you will receive the link. And that's a pleasure to answer, because it makes us discover also some cases we wouldn't have thought about. And sometimes the answer is no, with no-code tool, that's not the right way of doing it. So it's important, and be careful. As no-code is now growing, if you meet people who say to you, yeah, no-code is like magic, you can do anything, yeah, fast, cheap, be very careful. They may be Scrooges. So we are sure there will be many people saying this, or saying, yeah, the code is dead and all. So be careful about it, and know that there are some limits, but you can do many things anyway. Thank you, Anne-Fels. Thank you, everybody. And see you soon. And have a good day, a great week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.